At the White House, a Democratic lawmaker took to the House floor to raise alarm about it and new questions over it. President Trump yesterday hosted the Crown Prince, Crown Prince MBS at the White House and defended him over the murder of journalist and Saudi dissident Jamal Khashoggi, among other things. And because of that, hearing that, Congressman Eugene Vindman is now demanding that President Trump release the transcript of a call with the Crown Prince that took place back in 2019 with MBS, when the congressman was actually, not a congressman, was actually serving on President Trump's National Security Council. Listen to this.
During my tenure on Trump's White House National Security Council staff, I reviewed many of Trump's calls with foreign leaders. Of all the calls I reviewed, 2 stood out as the most problematic. The first, we all know, it was between President Trump and President Zelensky, which resulted in President Trump's first impeachment. The second was between President Trump and Mohammed bin Salman. After the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, I reviewed a call between the president and the Saudi Crown Prince. The American people and the Khashoggi family deserve to know what was said on that call. If history is any guide, the receipts will be shocking. I call on the president to release that transcript.
Democratic Congressman Eugene Vindman of Virginia. Congressman, thank you for being here. I don't know how much you can discuss, but what are you suggesting happened on that call?
Well, look, as I mentioned last night on the floor of the House of Representatives, that there were 2 calls among many with foreign leaders that particularly disturbed me. And one we know was with President Zelensky of Ukraine, the extortion call, and that resulted in the president's first impeachment. This was the second one that really bothered me because this was about the murder of an American resident, a Virginia resident, and a Washington Post reporter. And the president, the conversation he had, obviously I can't get into the details, but it was counterfactual to what the president was claiming last night, what U.S. security and intelligence services have known and stated publicly was the involvement of MBS. And it's time that the president come clean. And frankly, in light of the enrichment that the Trump family has received in the ensuing years, I think it's even more deeply disturbing and frankly shocking.
I mean, the contents of the Zelensky call, as you mentioned, resulted in Trump's first impeachment. I mean, what are you suggesting about the call that MBS contained? Impeachable offenses? Or just it's different from what he said publicly yesterday?
Well, look, there was actually a book written by Mr. Woodward where the president said that he saved MBS's ass. I'm just going to quote that. And I think that the actions and the special treatment that the Saudi Crown Prince has received and the ensuing self-enrichment by the Trump family from Saudi Arabian officials is certainly a conflict of interest. It was the call itself, I think, would be shocking. Again, I can't get into any details, but the president actually released a transcript of the Ukraine call, and I think the president should also release the transcript of the call with MBS that occurred after the journalist was brutally butchered by Saudi agents in the Turkish embassy in Istanbul.
As you mentioned, the Khashoggi family, I want to play how angrily and forcefully President Trump defended being asked about that Saudi dissident's murder.
You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
Congressman, you hear that and you think what?
I think it's a ridiculous statement. Look, we have to deal with potentially unsavory or adversarial folks from around the world, and whether it's Kim Jong-un, the president of North Korea, or the leader of North Korea, or Vladimir Putin, or President Xi of China, we have to deal with them. But that doesn't mean we have to cozy up to them. That doesn't mean we have to whitewash history. and eliminate what we know are facts or claims certainly made by the intelligence services of the United States that the prince was involved in the brutal murder of Khashoggi. We can deal with him and at the same time acknowledge that those things happened, and the president actually seems to be whitewashing it, which the American people deserve to know the truth. The Khashoggi family deserves to know the truth. And, you know, it should come as no surprise that the Ukraine phone call was not the only phone call that was problematic that the president had with other foreign leaders.
Congressman Eugene Vindman, thank you so much for coming in. John.
Thank you.